from a political standpoint, and it may have worked for them to a large extent, where they address the current opposition leader as Bakramak or Bakramasa. And it's funny how life is, where today Jamaica, and in particular the current administration, is set to now meet with clearly the person who is the real Bakramasa, and none other than Marco Rubio, who is coming in to outline what Bakra want with respect of a little place like Jamaica. Now, let me put the whole discussion into context, right? Because from where we are, what it is that Jamaica has largely failed for years. As an island, Jamaica has been at the mercy of the United States application of foreign policy instead of developing its own natural resources, in particular its people. Jamaica has cemented a developmental approach where now more than 45 to 46% of Jamaica's population lives outside of Jamaica. And of course, its medical services are now being bolstered by the engagement of Cuban medical professionals, especially nurses, where its own locally trained doctors and nurses rush to the USA, Canada, and the United Kingdom as they can't make a decent living off their skills in Jamaica. And so now we have a situation where the ball is now inverting. And the US Secretary of State, who is an unelected individual from a Jamaican standpoint in Jamaica, is now set to articulate to Jamaica its need to send home the Cubans or face sanctions. Now, according to a 2016 World Bank report, it basically stated that Jamaica, with a population of just under 3 million, some 2.8, 2.9 million people, have a ratio of just about 1 or 0.5 doctors, 0.5 doctors for every 1,000 Jamaicans. By the same token, its nursing cohort is not any different. There is some 1.8 nurses available to every 1,000 Jamaicans. Now, this can be good. And we saw where during the COVID epidemic, where the dramatic shortage of doctors and nurses led to the deepening conditions in terms of how the COVID pandemic ravaged Jamaica. And to some extent, we also saw the participation of what is commonly referred to as the White Jacket Brigade out of Cuba, and how they came in to help to alleviate the problems that Jamaica was having. Now, this this White Jacket Brigade was actually established in 2005 by President Fidel Castro. They were referred to as the Henry Reeve Medical Brigade, or the White Coat Army. And this was a strategy on Castro's part to respond to emergencies and serious epidemics around the world, where doctors from the brigade would have been trained in specialized medicine and infectious disease containment. And we saw in 2020, I think it was July of 2020, when 20 doctors from that brigade went to Kenya to manage the coronavirus pandemic. They also came to join another 100 Cuban doctors who have been working in Kenya for the previous 2 years since Cuba and Kenya had agreed on this doctors deal. Now, over time, what Cuba has seemingly managed to do is to farm out these doctors not only to African states but around the Caribbean as well. And of course, these participating countries were required to pay these medical personnel at some agreed rates. Now, from an American standpoint, the Americans are reading this as human trafficking, and seeing it as a way to undermine United States sanctions against Cuba, because these physicians or medical personnel are being paid in United States currency, which basically circumvents the embargoes that the United States has placed on Cuba, going as far back as 1960, when the Helms-Burton legislation came into effect, which imposed all of these sanctions. Now, Rubio, as a Cuban extract, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he is Cuban by nationality. I'm not sure if he was born in Cuba, but the fact is he is of Cuban heritage, and is dead set personally against are dead set on overturning the current Cuban administration. That has been his forte for years. I've lived here now in America for over 16, 17 years, and and here in Florida, where I know that this has been a mantra of his. And so it now leaves you to wonder what the current Jamaican administration is going to do in response to this threat. Now, I say this against the background that Jamaica has for years been caught in this cycle of dependency on foreign powers, particularly the United States. And so rather than harnessing its own resources and human capital in order to build a self-sustaining economy, the island's development strategy has always been marked by short-term fixes, brain drain, and a failure to prioritize local capacity. Now, this recent controversy over Cuban medical professionals, where the US is now threatening sanctions against Jamaica unless we expel the Cubans, highlights a deeper problem. Jamaica's inability to retain its own skilled workforce, due, in my opinion, to what I call systematic neglect. Now, to reverse this trend, Jamaica must reclaim its sovereignty by investing in its people, something that the country has not done for decades. We in Jamaica, and particularly our political masters, need to invest in restructuring the Jamaican economy and pursuing foreign policy that serves the national interest rather than bending to external pressure. For example, Jamaica's most valuable resource is not bauxite or tourism, but the people of Jamaica. Yet nearly half of the Jamaican population lives outside of Jamaica, some 46% of Jamaicans. And with doctors, nurses, and engineers fleeing due to low wages and limited opportunities. Now, the healthcare sector is just one of the glaring examples that while Cuban nurses fill critical gaps, Jamaican trained professionals migrate en masse to the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada, where salaries are exponentially higher. And of course, this exodus is not accidental, but it has been the result of decades of underinvestment in public sector wages, poor working conditions, and a lack of incentives for professionals to stay in Jamaica. Again, this migration issue is not one that is easily addressed. I know that, and I'm pretty sure most of you guys, you listening to this podcast, will recognize that. However, what Jamaica needs to do is to pursue economic policies that not favors foreign interests, but pursue policies that favors local development over foreign interests. Jamaica's economic model has long prioritized foreign investment and loans over self-sufficiency. Structural adjustment programs imposed by the IMF in the period 1970 to 1980s forced austerity measures that essentially gutted the public services, including healthcare and education. And rather than investing in local industries such as agriculture, renewable energy, and technology, successive administrations have relied on tourism, remittances, and bauxite exports, all of which are vulnerable to these external shocks. And so this approach has left Jamaica in an economically fragile state and in a state of perpetual indebtedness. Now, Jamaica's foreign policy, again, has always been reactive rather than strategic. And so while the country has at times taken bold stances in its support for things like the African liberation movements of the 1970s, it frequently bends to US pressure on issues like Cuba, Venezuela, and China. And so the current US demand to remove Cuban medical personnel, despite the critical role that they play in Jamaica's healthcare system, demonstrates how Jamaica's sovereignty is undermined by fear of sanctions. Instead of leveraging its diplomatic relationships for mutual benefit, Jamaica too often capitulates to external dictates. Now, it's important that we get an understanding. When we talk about this 46% of Jamaicans migrating, if you look back on the Jamaican migration statistics between 1970 and 2000, on an average, some 9.6 Jamaicans per thousand, right, is leaving the country. And invariably, these are the people who have benefited from whatever educational opportunities there are. And if you dive into those statistics, there are some critical periods where this migration really just catapulted in a number of the years of this 30-year period under discussion. We see upwards of 16 to 20 Jamaicans per thousand of population leaving the country. And invariably, when them leave, them now come back. And so when digging into or diving into these statistics and diving into the reasons, right, we would find ourselves in a better position to address some of these problems. So again, in respect of the pathway forward, what is it that the government of Jamaica has to do? Now, I really don't care who is the government, right? Whether it's the Labour Right, them or the People's National Party and whoever. For me, I don't care. What I'm concerned with is a Jamaica that looks at developing its domestic population. What is the way forward? We need to retain and invest in Jamaican talent. We need to stop the brain drain. And in order to do that, we are going to have to increase wages and improve working conditions, particularly for healthcare workers, teachers, and engineers. We need to create incentives such as student loan forgiveness, housing grants, and research funding for professionals who wish to remain, who are going to remain in Jamaica, if you wish for them to remain in Jamaica. We need to expand medical training capacity so that Cuba's assistance becomes unnecessary, not because of US pressure, but because Jamaica has developed its own robust system. We need to diversify our economy beyond tourism and remittances. Jamaica has to shift us from a service-based economy to one driven by innovation and production. And these are going to require some key steps, which include revitalizing agriculture, in as much as agriculture is, subject to the vagaries of weather and so on. Investing in renewable energies such as solar, wind, hydropower, to cut energy costs and foster some green industries. We need to support tech startups and creative industries such as music, film, and digital services through grants and tax break. Plus, we need to pursue an independent foreign policy. Jamaica should engage with all nations based on mutual respect, not from fear of sanctions. And of course, this is going to mean strengthening ties with the global south. We are also going to have to strengthen ties with our Caribbean nations. And so from a global south position, Africa, Latin America, and Asia, we need to strengthen the ties with them for trade and cooperation. We need to certainly resist the US bullying on Cuba by asserting that healthcare is a sovereign decision, not one that can be dictated to by people from the outside. We also need to leverage our multinational platforms. And I mentioned earlier CARICOM, the United Nations, the African Caribbean Partnership, in order to amplify our voice as a sovereign nation. So these are not strategies that we are going to be able to to put in place overnight, but we have to start somewhere. There was once a politician, Michael Manley, who made an argument about, you know, getting up and standing up, walk around the world on our feet rather than crawl around on our hands and knees. And we are at that point where we're going to now have to stand up. We need to side with and build the relationships with our CARICOM partners and other partnerships that are worthwhile pursuing around the world, especially in this tumultuous time with respect to how America sees itself as administering its foreign policy. The issue is one that, you know, is going to beg a fair amount of understanding on the part of Jamaicans. But our current predicament, the reliance on Cuban doctors while our own professionals flee and are threatened by US sanctions for seeking help, is a symptom of a deeper failure in governance, and economic planning. And of course, the solution is not to submit to foreign pressure, but to build a self-reliant Jamaica where its people can thrive at home. My view is that by investing in our workforce and by diversifying our economy and pursuing an independent foreign policy, Jamaica can break free from this dependency and we can chart our own future. The choice is clear. Either we continue to beg or we start building. Let me know what you guys think about what I think. Let me see your feedback in the comment section. If you like the video, hit the like button. And of course, if you haven't as yet, I may ask you to subscribe to the channel. And so that when a new video drop, especially in this tumultuous political and social time where, Mr. B always have a take that they want to share with the people out there. So until such time, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and read the feedback in the comment section. Big respect. More time.